Welcome to today's video, where we'll be diving into the story of two ancient cities that are remembered for their great sin and destruction, Sodom and Gomorrah. These cities, mentioned in the Bible, have been linked to corruption and wickedness. But which one was more corrupt? Was it Sodom, known for its cruelty and inhospitality? Or was it Gomorrah, a city full of greed and indulgence? In the book of Genesis, both cities are destroyed by fire and brimstone, sent by God as a punishment for their evil ways. But what made these cities so sinful? What did their people do that led to such a severe judgment? And why did both cities meet the same fiery fate? Today, we're going to take a closer look at these two cities. We'll explore their histories, the stories of their wickedness, and how their fate became a warning that is still discussed today. Were they equally bad, or did one city outdo the other in corruption? Join us as we uncover the truth behind the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and what it can teach us about morality, judgment, and the consequences of sin. Stay with us as we go on this journey to understand why these cities became symbols of sin in biblical history, and whether one was more corrupt than the other. Sodom and Gomorrah are two ancient cities that appear in the Bible, specifically in the book of Genesis. These cities are most famous for their destruction by God because of their great sinfulness. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah begins in Genesis, where they are mentioned as part of a larger story about Abraham and his nephew Lot. According to the Bible, God planned to destroy these cities because their people were incredibly wicked. The people of Sodom and Gomorrah were known for being cruel, selfish, and immoral. They were involved in sinful behaviors like inhospitality, greed, and sexual immorality. God sent two angels to warn Lot, who was living in Sodom, to escape before the destruction began. These cities were located near the Dead Sea, which is a large body of salt water at the border of modern-day Israel and Jordan. The region was known for its lush plains and fertile land, which made it a desirable place to live. But despite its natural beauty, the people of these cities were living in a way that went against God's teachings. The cultural backdrop of Sodom and Gomorrah was one of wealth and excess. The cities had strong economies, but their leaders and citizens were known to ignore the needs of the poor and act in harmful ways toward others. This moral decay led to their downfall, as God could no longer tolerate their actions. The destruction of these cities is seen as a warning in the Bible about the dangers of sin and the importance of living in a way that respects God and others. The city's fate has been remembered throughout history as a powerful example of how corruption can lead to judgment. Sodom is often remembered for its terrible sins, which made it one of the most notorious cities in the Bible. The people of Sodom were known for being cruel and inhospitable, which means they didn't show kindness or care to others. One of the worst things they did was refuse to help strangers, even when they were in need. One of the most famous stories about Sodom involves Lot, Abraham's nephew, who lived in the city. One day, two angels visited Sodom, disguised as travelers. They came to warn Lot about the city's impending destruction. When the people of Sodom found out about the visitors, they tried to harm them. They surrounded Lot's house and demanded that the angels be handed over to them. Lot, trying to protect his guests, offered his daughters instead, but the people of Sodom rejected this offer. This shows just how far the city had fallen into wickedness. The actions of the people of Sodom weren't just about violence or cruelty. The prophets and other Jewish texts often speak about their arrogance and disregard for others. The people of Sodom had great wealth, but they did not share it with the poor or care for the needy. They were selfish and greedy, using their resources for their own enjoyment while ignoring the suffering around them. The sins of Sodom were so great that God could no longer allow them to continue. In the Bible, the destruction of Sodom is often used as a warning about the dangers of living a life of selfishness, cruelty, and neglecting the needs of others. The people of Sodom were punished because they chose sin over kindness and justice, and their story serves as a lesson for us all. Gomorrah, like Sodom, was a city known for its deep corruption and sinfulness. The people of Gomorrah were living in a way that went against God's laws. They were marked by moral decay, which means they had lost their sense of right and wrong. The city was full of indulgence, meaning the people cared only about satisfying their own desires, whether through luxury, pleasure, or excess. The sins of Gomorrah weren't just about personal indulgence. There was also a spirit of lawlessness in the city. This means the people ignored the rules that helped society function. They didn't care about justice or fairness, and they often treated others with cruelty. This made Gomorrah a dangerous place to live, where people could act however they wanted without facing consequences. Although the Bible doesn't give as many details about Gomorrah as it does for Sodom, it's clear that the people of both cities were living in similar ways. Both cities were filled with pride, greed, and selfishness, which led them to turn away from God. Because their sins were so great, the fate of Gomorrah became tied to the fate of Sodom. In the Bible, we learn that both cities were destroyed by fire and brimstone, which was God's way of punishing their evil ways. Gomorrah's destruction, like Sodom's, was a warning. The people of both cities had ignored the chance to change their ways, and their punishment showed the seriousness of turning away from God. Their story is often remembered together because of how their corruption led to the same terrible end. The destruction of Gomorrah, along with Sodom, serves as a powerful reminder about the consequences of living in sin. When we look at the corruption of Sodom and Gomorrah, it's important to understand how both cities were condemned in the Bible. While both cities were destroyed because of their great sins, some people wonder if Sodom's crimes were worse than Gomorrah's, or if they were equally corrupt. In the Bible, both cities are described as being filled with wickedness, selfishness, and cruelty. The people of Sodom were known for their inhospitality and violence, while Gomorrah's people were marked by indulgence and lawlessness. But it's not always easy to say which city was worse. The Bible doesn't give us a clear answer about which city was more corrupt, but it does show that both cities deserved punishment for their sins. Looking at ancient texts and scriptures from Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we see that these cities are often used as examples of what happens when people turn away from God. In the Jewish tradition, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is seen as a warning about the dangers of ignoring God's laws and living a life of sin. Christianity also teaches that the story of these cities reminds us to live in a way that honors God and helps others. In Islam, the story is also told, with a focus on how the people of these cities rejected the warnings of the prophets and chose evil over righteousness. While Sodom and Gomorrah had different types of corruption, both cities were equally condemned for their actions. The message is clear across all three faiths. When people live in sin, ignoring justice, kindness, and respect for others, they face serious consequences. The destruction of these cities serves as a powerful reminder for us all to live a righteous life. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the most dramatic stories in the Bible. According to the scriptures, God destroyed these two cities with fire and brimstone, which is burning sulfur, as punishment for their great sin. The people of these cities were wicked, selfish, and cruel, so God chose to wipe them out completely. He sent angels to warn Lot, the righteous man living in Sodom, to escape with his family before the cities were destroyed. When Lot and his family fled, fire and sulfur rained down from the sky, destroying everything in its path. This fiery destruction is often seen as a divine judgment, a punishment for the corruption and evil that had taken over the cities. It shows how seriously God takes sin, especially the kinds of sins committed by the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. The cities were full of greed, inhospitality, and violence, and God's judgment was a direct result of their refusal to change their ways. Over the years, many people have wondered what caused the sudden destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Some researchers have proposed that there could have been a natural disaster, like an earthquake or a volcanic eruption, that might explain the fiery destruction. The area around the Dead Sea, where these cities were believed to be located, is known for its earthquakes and volcanic activity. Some believe that these natural events could have been the cause of the city's sudden demise. However, the Bible portrays the destruction as a direct act of God's judgment, emphasizing that it wasn't just a random disaster, but a punishment for the city's wickedness. Whether caused by natural or supernatural events, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a warning about the consequences of living in sin. The stories of Sodom and Gomorrah have been passed down for thousands of years, and they still carry powerful lessons today. These cities serve as symbols of warning in both religious faiths and modern culture. The Bible shows that their destruction was not just about the fire and brimstone, but about the consequences of living in sin, neglecting justice, and being cruel to others. In today's world, the lessons from Sodom and Gomorrah are still relevant. We often hear discussions about the importance of treating others with kindness, standing up for what's right, and helping those in need. The stories of these cities remind us that when people live selfishly or harm others, there can be serious consequences. It encourages us to examine our own actions and ask whether we are living in a way that honors God and helps the world around us. In modern conversations about morality, the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah is often referenced as a warning about the dangers of ignoring justice, fairness, and compassion. Whether through religion or in everyday life, the legacy of these cities teaches us to be mindful of how we live and to remember that our actions matter. In the end, it's difficult to say if Sodom was more corrupt than Gomorrah, or if one city's sins were worse than the other. Both cities were filled with wickedness and immorality, leading to their destruction. Sodom became the emblem of ultimate corruption, remembered for its cruelty, inhospitality, and violence. But Gomorrah's fate was no less tragic. The people of Gomorrah were just as guilty, living in indulgence and lawlessness. Both cities turned away from righteousness and paid the price for their actions. Perhaps the most important lesson here is that their stories are inseparable. Sodom and Gomorrah were twin cities, and their destruction serves as a twin warning. These cities stand as reminders that no matter how prosperous or powerful a city or nation may become, ignoring justice, kindness, and moral responsibility will lead to destruction. The fate of Sodom and Gomorrah is not just a story from the past. It is a lesson that continues to echo through time. Their fall serves as a powerful warning for us all, reminding us that our actions have consequences, and that living a life of corruption and selfishness will eventually catch up with us. What do you think? Was Sodom's sin greater, or was Gomorrah equally doomed? Both cities faced the same fate, but their paths to destruction were different. Was one city's sin worse than the others, or were they both equally guilty? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this powerful story. Share your opinions in the comments below. Remember, if you found this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to Sacred Chronicles for more insightful discussions on history, faith, and the lessons we can learn from the past. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more stories that have shaped our world.